Hello, welcome. We have here on stage Thomas Bartani from Project Lead P Network, Barney Mannerings, founder of Vega Protocol, Pavel Senelnikov, I'm the pro of names, integration lead at Metis, and Yanislav Malahov, founder of Eternity. Thank you so much for being here. And we're talking about the Future Is Multichain, enhancing the interoperability of DApps and DeFi with cross-chain oracles. Welcome. Please tell us a bit more about yourself.
Hello? Okay, excellent, excellent. Hi, my name is Pavel. I'm the integration lead at Metis. We are a layer 2 scaling solution. I basically handle all of the questions related to, what's required for what's required for integration. I basically walk through a lot of our projects that want to build on Metis and basically give them a direction on oracles, on the graph integration for different things in relation to more of just the biz dev and the technical approach. So glad to be here and discuss more so about the cross-chain and multi-chain aspects.
Hi everyone, my name is Barney Mannerings and I'm one of the co-founders at Vega Protocol. Vega is a it's a app chain, if you like. It's a chain that's basically optimized for trading and particularly for derivatives trading. It's designed to optimize the trading of margin products, including with leverage. It's designed to deal much better with risk and closeouts, and therefore to be able to offer more leverage and more capital efficiency than most of the general purpose L1s. And obviously, it's great to be here at the Blockchain Oracle Summit. Vega is both a consumer of oracles in terms of settlement when we're talking about settling products, and we want to consume oracles from across the whole crypto ecosystem rather than be some kind of walled garden. But we're also, producer of oracles or potential producer of oracles in terms of prices and data coming out of the trading. So super excited to be here and part of this conversation.
Hi, my name is Yanislav Malahov. I'm the founder of Eternity Blockchain. It's a new scalable smart contract platform with built-in oracles as part of the smart contract language. And the oracle results are also typed. I guess that's a big overlap to the Blockchain Oracle Summit. We are here today and further, Eternity is an infrastructure. It's a smart contract platform like Ethereum, but written from scratch in Erlang and with built-in state channels and naming system and also generalized accounts. And beyond that, I'm also the founder of superhero.com. It's a wallet working with the Eternity blockchain. And that's in short.
Hello everyone. My name is Thomas Bertani. I'm the founder of the P Network. P Network is a cross-chain solution for bridging assets and for across different blockchains. We have integrations at the moment with 18 blockchains, including EVM-like chains, EOS-like chains, Algorand, Bitcoin, Litecoin, many others. Our team is also the founding team of Oracleize, now called Provable, which is one of the longest-running oracles on Ethereum. We've been running since before the Ethereum mainnet, actually. So before, we started the Oracle service initially in December 2014 and live on mainnet of Ethereum since September 2015. So we do love oracles and cross-chain. So this is perfect panel for us. Thank you.
Nice. Let's deep dive into the multi-chain future. Now it's a buzzword, I guess, because we're not there yet, maybe. What is your opinion? Where are we heading? Is it cross-chain? Is it multi-chain?
Sure, I can start with that one. So a lot of applications are being developed on just EVM-compatible ecosystems. So you have tons of DApps like Balancer. You have a Curve. You have any type of swaps as well. They're all being deployed on different chains, and they're all in I guess the ecosystem to basically grow their own products and support other additional core DApps that are built on top of those products as well. So a lot of what we see is DEXs are the main supporting mechanisms of the ecosystem, and so they provide the core liquidity inside of it, and which allows other DApps to grow and utilize the liquidity for that. You have tons of other applications like Beefy that are auto compounders that also leverage the liquidity inside of different ecosystems. And so they build within these individual chains, and they grow the individual ecosystems, and they leverage the security of these individual chains. But there has been a rise in cross-chain integrations. There's definitely more demand in terms of how do we get liquidity from one chain to go to the other chain. And instead of building an ecosystem from scratch, you do utilize these different bridges that like if you want to move from Avalanche to Ethereum or to Polygon or to any other type of chain, you'd need to use a type of bridge. And in order to do that, in order to not just support it from scratch, you need to use these cross-chain tools. So I think that having the ability to build these DApps and then having the ability for bridges to expand the ecosystems, as well as the individual DApps that are built on the ecosystems, are very key to support the growth and I guess the development. So I think it's very good to have both the DApps as well as the liquidity to support these interactions.
Yeah, I'd add to that a little bit as well. There's a couple of things I think about when I think about kind of the multi-chain future. And the first thing I think about is I always take it back to where blockchain and crypto is going. And when I think about these things, when we thought about Vega, when we started Vega, we were very, very focused on how to make something that is useful in the real world. And most of the use cases we see for blockchain right now kind of exist within a blockchain ecosystem and are difficult to scale out to real world use cases, or even at this point in time maybe don't even work better than some of the centralized alternatives. So if you have the centralized alternative that works for you, you don't have much reason to switch right now. So when I think about when crypto's 100x the size it is now, I think about what is going to drive that other 99x, and that being real world use cases. And when I look at those real-world use cases and the requirements, whether they're better, faster, more efficient trading applications, whether they are applications which can use huge amounts of on-chain data, whether they're things which can be very, very parallel across many shards or whatever else they are, it leads me to think that the future is going to get weird. The number of different protocols, the number of ways they integrate is going to not just be kind of like 2 or 3 sort of multi-chain things with a couple of bridges. I might have heard the term modular blockchains and the modular future of actually taking different layers, different bits of consensus layer, different bits of signing layers, different bits of contract execution, and having sort of combinations of those modules. So not just multi-chain in terms of 2 or 3 L1s talking to each other, but actually people composing together different modules in ways that enable much better use cases, much more efficient use cases, and actually enable that next bit of growth. And so I think that's where we're going. And the big question for everyone is around interoperability. It's around the protocols that allow us to get there, allow us to share data, allow us to share execution, and allow us to build applications and protocols that work on this kind of disparate modular future.
Yeah, so what's the future? I assume that in the future there will be way more people and entities with private keys signing transactions on blockchains directly. So it's kind of like the original, let's say, cut out the middleman idea of Bitcoin. So the entities which will provide the data to the smart contracts, ideally they're like the source of this information, of this data. Right now we have like Oracleize, which is kind of like a intermediary layer in between, but I think in the future it will become way more simple and mainstream, that this data gets provided to the blockchain, to the smart contracts, to the ecosystem directly from the source, and yeah, we should make it more easy so that everybody can become an oracle essentially.
I believe like the future will surely be multi-chain. but users will not notice, meaning that today there is clearly a strong push from the different blockchain communities, let's say, to build on some verticals. So there are many blockchains that are specialized for gaming or for NFTs or for maybe high frequency trading or for general purpose computing or DeFi in some cases. So there are different verticals that are being tested, let's say, since we still don't know what works and what doesn't, really. That's the reality of things. We are learning it the hard way in some cases. And I think people really don't care, meaning that today users move from one blockchain to the other mostly for speculative reasons, meaning if they try to understand how to maximize their profits. So if they see, for example, there is a DeFi platform where they can stake something and get a higher APY, they will use a cross-chain bridge. But they don't care about the bridge itself. They care about earning more money. So I think the future will be multi-chain, meaning that there will be like a variety of use cases and a variety of blockchains. But to get there, we need mostly a couple of components, which today are still in their infancy. One is like decent cross-chain protocols that abstract out the complexity and that enable some degree of interoperability and composability between the different, these different ecosystems and applications on different blockchains. And the other tool is basically UX that doesn't suck, because today, we all use MetaMask or wallets like that, which are extremely technical and that people do mistakes all the time. They always lose private keys. So we need social recovery wallets. We need to abstract out blockchains basically so that the end user doesn't see it. And one way to do it, for example, on Ethereum is with EVM-like chains. It's easier because you can have sort of the same wallet on different chains, so you can have the same identity across chains, and potentially via things like smart wallets, it's safe and so on. You can potentially build on top some systems that at least simplify the interaction with gas and transactions, which is a big stopper today, but there is still a lot of work to do on those two fronts, in my opinion.
Nice. If I think about what could be a useful use case for me, I'm highly interested in dynamic NFTs. I don't know if anybody is obsessed with that idea as well, but this is just gambling, I know. But what other fun stuff could we build with cross-chain oracles and stuff?
Can I start? Yeah. I really want to answer this question because this is one use case that, in my opinion, should be explored way more. And I don't care specifically about NFTs themselves, but about the fact of providing utility from systems that interact cross-chain, where there is social value, or at least some utility that is perceived by the average Joe and not just by tech people. Because tech people, we are bored by it. Everyone here is technical. It's always the same people. We are builders. We are building this new ecosystem. But this is not our ambition. Is for this technology to get out there and to have an impact on people that are not technical and on the average Joe, right? So NFTs is something that doesn't scare people out. So it's a perfect use case to get started because no one is scared by NFTs. They are scared about DeFi, about hacks, about money being lost. NFTs, they see it as something playful. So that's why actually last month at ETH Amsterdam, we did a project for fun over the weekend. We said, okay, let's experiment. Let's do something new with NFTs and with those dynamic NFTs. And we did just an example. It's not an application really. It's just a demo showing how, for example, via Twitter, you can potentially tweet something out and make your NFT change the hair color, for example, or something like that, right? So you basically, you guys probably know that on Twitter you can have hexagonal verified profile pictures. So if you provide a signature that signs your username, basically, and a few other metadata, you can basically associate an on-chain identity, like an address, with your Twitter handle, clearly you're not supposed to do it with your main wallet, but you may want to do it with your vanity wallet, right? And once you have done it, it's extremely powerful because you have a platform that people are already familiar with, such as Twitter. And via oracles, you can basically push that information on chain about, a post, like a tweet, and you can make NFTs you own potentially evolve depending on something that has happened, in the real world, meaning on social platforms that people use every day. So this is something that it's powerful because like you can see visually things changing depending on some triggers. And again, this is all about oracles, right? If we don't get the oracle component right, this whole thing doesn't make any sense. And clearly there is a trust line with Twitter here. And it's important for the users to understand that. But let's keep in mind people, don't care about decentralization, they care about security, they don't want to lose money. So decentralization is something we are educating them about. We are telling them, look, this is important, you should care. But people never look at blockchain because of decentralization. They look at blockchain because they want to make money, because, maybe for interoperability with DeFi and stuff like that. But I think that basically NFTs, dynamic NFTs, and oracles are a critical component to have an impact on platforms people use already. So it's important for adoption. And so we need to get oracles right.
Mm-hmm. And I want to expand on that point in terms of dynamic NFTs. Recently, Vitalik has mentioned a concept called soulbound NFTs. So the ability to associate a NFT with some type of representation and allocation. So for example, it could be associated with your reputation. It could be associated with a profile for an account that you have. And it can be encapsulated into different profiles that you can have. It can also be assigned to you by specific DApps that you can then use for establishing more so of your profile. Certain things like in the DAO ecosystem, it's very difficult to come in, especially brand new, and contribute to different types, contribute in a way that's impactful to the DAO without establishing first your reputation, without establishing that you're serious, that you want to grow and expand the DAO that you've joined. You have to prove that. You have to sit in the Discord for 2 months and then only then will they give you some amount of attention that you can actually actionably influence. When talking about soulbound and dynamic NFTs, there are ways that you can do work for a DAO on one chain and then have that influence your soulbound NFT in such a way that you can go to another chain and use that as your trust basis on your way to build up your reputation in such a way where you don't have to sit in a Discord for 2 months and only then will people start giving you actionable things, is that you can say that here, I might be anonymous, I might be just this person on there, I don't have to give you my LinkedIn, I can show you the work that I did for these different types of DAOs within the ecosystem, and then I can show you the work that I did in fact do and influence, and then for that you can now supercharge in a way where I'm able to do work for a DAO, and then I'm able to do work for another DAO, and then that establishes my profile, establishes my reputation, and then more and more enables that decentralized economy for a way that people can come in and interact where you don't have to give them your personal information. You can just work as an anon and just continue the development effort in relation to that. So I think that having that ability to do work on a single chain, but also use that work on different types of chains and leveraging these cross-chain oracles, you can influence your reputation in a way where you can now, it's no longer just encapsulated in a single chain, but in fact the whole decentralized ecosystem.
Yeah, so multi-chain, cross-chain, oracles, what kind of use cases are going to be enabled through this? I mean, if we have a perfect multi-chain world with interoperability, the data on one chain will be also available on another chain or on the other chains. Of course, this is kind of like the wet dream. In reality, there are many difficulties here. We wouldn't want to require essentially every node operator to run every other node software. So, but still, I think it makes sense to have like certain overlaps between different chains in the future. For example, there could be a chain which is focused only on agricultural insurance contracts in a decentralized way, using the weather data which is publicly available, which ideally gets fed into the blockchain via the meteorological institutes. They could even kind of like gamble or game on the results, like who is like providing more accurate weather data, and this way also improving the results as a whole. And you could kind of like mesh it up with for example, with a football betting or sports betting use case, where you essentially use also this weather data from one chain, which is like focused on maybe agriculture insurance, to insure also against when the football games need to be cancelled because of bad weather. For example, if we have like the data accessible from different chains, we can do mashups, more interesting applications. Yeah.
I don't have a huge amount to add. I think a lot's been said already. I think the only thing I'd say is that the overriding point on I think all of these themes was that like you get value from connecting products and services together. And you look at the Web 2 ecosystem, and that ecosystem is full of examples of service providers connecting their data together. You integrate GitHub with some other service, etc. And a lot of those services might sit on different chains. There's a chain called Radical, which is a great project that's trying to decentralize GitHub. There's IPFS and Filecoin, and then there's layer 1 chains, and there's app chains like ours. And if we don't want to be at a disadvantage to the centralized world, we need to work out how to integrate those things in a fairly standardized way, so people who want to add value by building new services can connect them together and can rely on the fact that they can get this data back and forth between chains. And I think that all of these examples sort of are examples of that, the need for that to be standardized and to be available to people who are developing on top of these chains.
Nice, thank you. There are so many different approaches to a multi-chain future. What is a trend that you see in your everyday life?
I think the interesting, the interesting trends that I see right now are probably sort of driven by some combination of speculation and necessity. So on the one hand, you have people seeing that something is getting a lot of press time, getting a lot of excitement in the community, and just wanting to ape into that. And you sort of see the obvious example recently, and we all know how that ended, was well, maybe it didn't end yet, but the Luna and Terra thing, where that was a whole chain and ecosystem, and potentially a use case for IBC, and something that was helpful, partly sort of adjacent to the Cosmos ecosystem. And that the speculation and the returns and those things drove what was going on there. And then on the necessity side of things, you see what's going on with Ethereum scaling and Ethereum L2s and Cosmos chains that support running EVM code and all of those things, where people are basically building these EVM applications and then discovering it costs $2,000 to use them, and so they're quickly trying to work out what to do, and so you're getting that kind of necessity-driven trend as well. And I think that's kind of what's happened and been happening. And what I see when I come to conferences like this, or the Modular Summit during the Amsterdam sort of blockchain week as well, is I start to see that people are being more intentional. I start to see that people are thinking about protocols for moving data across chains. They're thinking about how to build modular blockchains, not just within Cosmos, but actually connecting together multiple chains. They're actually thinking about this interoperability with a bit of a longer future horizon, and I think that's really, really healthy, because driving things just from sort of speculation, or because you're sort of forced by the economics of one chain, will create very short-term solutions that blow up in your face or don't work for long or are suboptimal in some other way. Whereas having these kind of conversations and creating these kind of designs and experiments for the future, many of them will fail, many of them won't go very far, but the ones that succeed will be the ways that we actually end up building this. So I think that's a trend I've seen recently.
Yeah, I guess for multi-chain, specifically the use cases that evolve around there is that we've seen a necessity for interoperability. We've seen that there's been an explosion in the different types of bridges that have been created and that are existing. There's multi-sig bridges, there's optimistic bridges, there's native protocol bridges as well. There's been that necessity for having these cross-chain or multi-chain applications. So there's been divided into different segments as well. So there's layer 0, layer 1, layer 2, and so that's more of the multi-chain variety. I think that for long-term and long-term development, I'm looking at I'm looking at common protocols being established. I guess IBC is one of the Cosmos variety for that. Of course, it's still in development. There's still you can only use it for token transfers, and then Polkadot is another example of this, where it's you have different types of parachains, and you're able to integrate that and then still leverage the same security mechanism as the entire protocol itself. I think that security is essential in the multi-chain world. I think that's, but right now as well, just to touch on that practical application, people want solutions that work right now. People want solutions that you can leverage it, and a lot of it has been the first mover's advantage. You have like a lot of applications that need to be developed on new chains, and then you need to be established for people to use and utilize your applications. It's usually the first people that do it right are the people that succeed, and the applications and dApps that go around, people associate the name to it. And then once you have that name established, it's really, you can reuse that same code that you've deployed on one chain and reuse it across all other chains in a way that people can trust the name. And I mean, that's of course, saying like trust in DeFi, it's kind of like bad. And in that case, you should trust the code. You can't trust the overall, just the name, but that's what people associate with it. And so with that, I think that with the bridges especially, I think it's important to consider that although IBC, although Cosmos is in development, although Polkadot is in development, the practical, realistic solutions are these cross-chain bridges that, although might have certain security assumptions, that they do provide that actionable value, especially to bootstrap certain ecosystems. And one of the most interesting ones that I found is the optimistic chain, or the optimistic variety, where you only need that security assumption of just one honest verifier to verify the entire message that comes through. So instead of relying on a multi-sig, you would rely on a single honest verifier to validate the transactions that are occurring between ecosystems, and then that's practical solutions that are working today. And so I think that practicality and having the solutions work in a way that people can use them now, and under certain security assumptions, I think, and then if you understand those security assumptions, I think that would be more valuable for the protocols to integrate, at least to have that first mover's advantage, to be established within the ecosystem, and then afterwards establish more of a long-term play in relation to Cosmos or Polkadot or any other layer 0 type of chains as well.
I think there are a couple of interesting trends, but maybe before mentioning briefly those two, I wanted to comment on this last point, which I think is interesting, on the fact that bridges. Another trend is the fact that bridges are becoming more and more diverse in the way they secure assets and on the approaches they follow. So optimistic bridges, I'm optimistic about, and I think they will actually be increasingly used for some use cases, but they don't work well for everything. So I think I'm not a huge believer of one single bridge doing it all. I think it's pretty much impossible because every bridge, every approach, including the multi-sig bridges, do something better than others. So there are some applications, some verticals, some use cases that work better with some kind of, architectures, with some kind of bridge architectures, and some others that maybe work best with optimistic ones for a reason of, liquidity, speed, security. I mean, it depends. There are always compromises being made with all these approaches and limitations in applicability. But going back to the trends I see, one about oracles specifically is stepping a little bit back and saying, okay, wait a second. Most proof of concepts we have seen in the last few years, especially from big companies, were basically centralized oracles, connecting a real-world event to simple smart contracts. But let's go back for a second and let's try to get price feeds right. And price feeds is something that everyone knew since the beginning would have been a very big topic for oracles. But I think no one had imagined how complex it would have been to get them right. And we found out the hard way via hacks, basically, and hundreds of millions being lost because of oracles issues. So now I think this is the right approach, like going back and trying to understand how to get the simplest form of oracles right, even if they look complex. So at least they're simple to think about. And then another approach, another trend which I think is key and on which personally I'm spending a lot of my time on is like communication of contracts across blockchains. So having bridges that don't move just assets, but that actually send data around. So inter-blockchain communications in a data-specific sense. So not for moving necessarily DeFi value or assets, but for moving messages. So having contracts on different blockchains interoperating. And I mean, as for us specifically as P Network, we started building on it in January last year, and we have experimented different verticals. And I think now we see many bridges that are starting to support it and are starting to use it. So I think it's promising because it means it's not just a technical solution for a problem that doesn't exist, but it's a technical solution for a use case that a lot of new apps actually need. For example, something we have seen being used a lot is gaming. Like there are communities that prefer some ecosystems to others. Like for example, I don't know, like in Asia, there are parts of the crypto community that is still very much interested in EOS as a blockchain, for instance. Or there are other EVM-like blockchains that maybe attract some kind of local geographies and communities better. For gaming, again, it's important for them to just abstract it out and give a simple interface. So if you can send messages from one blockchain to the other, everything gets simpler and you can attract a wider audience. So I think it's quite obvious in foresight that this is a key aspect and that it will be increasingly used in the future.
Nice, thank you.
So the trends, we have definitely seen kind of like an explosion, generally the topic of oracles, meaning today we are here at the Blockchain Oracle Summit. I don't know, has there been a conference focused on blockchain oracles in the past so far? Probably not, so we're kind of like writing history here. So yeah, how do smart contracts and these blockchain entities, how do they interact with data which gets generated from the outside world, from the reality? So here, for example, with Eternity, what we are doing is that we are having a very structured approach and mechanism, a well-defined way how smart contracts can essentially get the data or ask for the data, and the data which gets returned is typed. So there's more structure than with Ethereum, which makes it also more safe and more bug prone. And the bridges already have been mentioned, this explosion of bridges. I think most of them aren't really so decentralized or kind of like insecure as we've also seen in the past. Like here's also questionable whether the bridge token should be the same value like the native token. Can bridges be 100% secure? I would actually like to ask you guys, what do you think? Like, is this possible?
I don't think so. I mean, this is the same question also for blockchains, really. I mean, it's always a balance. It's called crypto economy. It's not math. Also, blockchains can fail, but clearly bridges can fail more easily. Also, because the attack surface is wider. Like, if you have a bridge that connects two blockchains, and if one of the two blockchains fails, the bridge will fail.
So should it be priced in? Should the risk be priced in?
Into what?
Into the token price.
I think it's being already priced in, given the hacks we have seen in the last year, right? I mean, most bridges were hacked. All the biggest bridges have been hacked. I think people understand this risk now, and they understand it better than last year, where they were overly maybe optimistic about bridges potentially becoming perfect and one bridge ruling it all, which I don't think is possible. But I think it's a compromise. I mean, it's like decentralization. If we cared about pure decentralization, we wouldn't be here. Because basically, the purest form of decentralization we have today, even if it has problems, is like, I mean, at least from my perspective, is Bitcoin. So it's a chain which is as simple as possible, does as little as possible, and doesn't change, unless it's required for security reasons. While here, we are trying to do something which is a little bit of a compromise, but not too much. So we try to keep it as decentralized as possible, while gaining more flexibility to have a wider impact. That's the way, at least, I see it. So I think, like, people, again, don't need full decentralization. They need enough decentralization to have more control than what they have today. The alternative is not, I mean, I think it's a spectrum. People just need, enough decentralization for the UX to be decent and for security to be much higher than they currently have, while retaining control. So,
yeah, I think on the, to expand on that as well, on the security of bridges, like you say, I think, we're in crypto, so everything is probabilities, right? So everything is probabilistic. With this chance, if you can cope with this much happening, you can cope with this many Byzantine validators, you've got all these sort of security assumptions, and you've got all these probabilities which need to get priced in, and maybe with the hacks we are getting better at pricing them in to certain things, but also we still see irrational run-ups on things which are unproven, so maybe we're still not that good at pricing them in. I think actually the emergence of insurance protocols for insuring other protocols will help with that pricing, because it'll give us a way to understand what the market thinks the risk is. But what I was going to say about bridge security is, when you're securing a bridge, you need to do one of two things. You need to either secure it effectively, because securing a bridge is about creating value, because whoever is operating, whichever decentralized entities are kind of in control of the bridge collectively, need to have less incentive to take all the money out of the bridge than they have to leave it in there. And you can do that by having a bridge that's fundamentally part of an ecosystem that's generating value from the bridge. So you send your tokens to Vega, people trade on Vega. Hopefully the value created on Vega from trading and from the fees for that is greater, and therefore it's in the interest of people to help that ecosystem grow and continue to exist, versus stealing the money out of the bridge. Or you end up having the user of the bridge needing to fund that security, and that's effectively, it's almost like paying for a bank account. It's like paying to warehouse those funds. If a bunch of people are going to hold on to your money for you, and there's no other way for them to be paid, then you're going to have to pay them enough that it's better for them to be seen as trustworthy and reliable holders of your money than it is for them to run away with it. So, one of the problems we have with bridges in the general sense, and some of the bridges we've seen, is they haven't worked that sort of model out very well, and you end up with a situation where some of the entities who are holding onto the money effectively have an incentive to be very short-term and to take it away.
Yeah, and expanding on the point of security and decentralization, I think that a lot of bridges have a degree of trust as well. So there is ones, and typically it's correlated with the amount of nodes validators that are on the chain itself, although it's not one-to-one, like in all cases. For example, like multi-sig, right? You have a structure where the amount of multi-sig users that you have, all you have to do is compromise a set amount, and then you can basically withdraw the tokens that are locked within the bridge itself. So that happened with Ronin, and a bunch of liquidity was drained from there due to that exploit with the actual multi-sig users. So that has a lower trust assumption, and then there's also protocols which are insured with the amounts of tokens that are locked or staked within the protocol in order to be running a validator. If you do decide to attack the network, you do get slashed. So there's and that part of that slashing goes into going back to the protocol users. And in this case, I'm optimistic about optimistic bridges because the security assumptions, again, you only need one honest validator for the entire set to be secure. So one honest validator can come in and basically say that, hey, this is incorrect, whatever data that you're passing through, don't include it, and then that's enough to prevent the attack from occurring. So you no longer have that set trust assumption where you have to have a set amount of multi-sig users. It's just relying on one person basically saying, hey, something's wrong over here. So I think that would be, there's still that trust assumption. There's still that trust assumption in terms of having one user come in and actually say that something's wrong, but it's significantly less than having, a 5 out of 9 multi-sig where all you have to do is compromise 5 users to control the entire bridge. And then, and of course, like protocols that inherit the security of the base chain. So any layer 2s are also fall within that category. So things like ZK rollups and optimistic rollups and Metis again inherits the security of Ethereum. So we take whatever the Ethereum nodes are and whatever currently it's still in proof of work, but in terms of just the security of Ethereum, it still relies on that overall security mechanism to do the execution. So in that case, the security assumption is still that's on our layer 2 is that one person just needs to call and say, hey, the sequencer did something wrong, and then they get slashed. So I think that having that ability to just basically understand the security models and what are the cases where the network can be attacked, and how much will it cost to attack the network. And of course, all bridges are basically honeypots where all it takes is just the amount of how much do you trust 5 people with $1 billion. And then of course, anything you can use that to attack any sort of network if the cost is high enough as well.
Nice, thank you. Let's change our point of view, because what I see now in DeFi is a lot of trash and genius. And how could this look like in 10 years? Regarding to cross-chain oracles, of course.
I guess that in a few years, the way we will be interacting with those DApps, with those tools and blockchains, will look very different. And I think again we will be abstracted out significantly, and I don't think we'll know much about what's going on behind the scenes, and we'll mostly be relying on, unfortunately or fortunately, on external evaluations on the risk level of the application, which is something that today is missing, and it's something that today is causing big issues also in the decentralized nature of the projects. So for example, we were mentioning insurance protocols, decentralized insurance protocols as a protection for bridges or for oracles getting something wrong. The big issue we have there is that no one today has a good way to evaluate the risk of a given smart contract. So that's why most decentralized insurance protocols have the issue where they don't know what's the right pricing for those instruments they are selling, because really no one can quantify the risk. So we could say, yeah, the compound or the Aave contract looks safe, so they are the safest. Okay, but safest compared to what? I mean, clearly they are safer than other protocols, because we have seen other protocols getting hacked more frequently. But that's just because it's not, I mean, that's just because the ecosystem is not mature enough. It will take more time. So those contracts are the best, but it's hard to quantify, to give a number and to say that's the ranking, that's how much it should cost, that's the exact score for it. So the price should be set accordingly. And I think this is key, because it's not realistic. I mean, decentralization doesn't mean, to me at least, that everyone should learn cryptography, or that everyone should be able to read the code. That's just stupid. I mean, it's never going to happen, right? What you want to have is a system where anyone who is capable of doing it can audit the system end to end. So the experts, and there will always be like someone identified as an expert, will be able to independently, permissionlessly, derive a score and publish it and say this is the risk level. That's similar to what auditing firms do today, right? But it's much. I mean, it's next level. It's not the same as getting an audit report as we do today. It's like saying you have a stake in the game, it's like companies that do ranking that today in the blockchain ecosystem no one does. Essentially because the risk is mostly unpredictable, and we don't really know yet what works, what doesn't, if there are vulnerabilities that have not been found out yet, and it's just too early. Once we find those scores, then we will be able to scale up all the impact those technologies can have, and also to understand better the risk and the implications, and users will be able to feel more confident about these interactions with these technologies, because they will see just those numbers and they will say, according to reputable entity A, B, and C, this is the average risk score for